No, for a week off. Yeah. Great, I think, get the first thing this back for the game one. Makes a large difference. So, Michael?
I don't lose that.
Oh, no. He is gone. He's down Portland there. We get started. Homemade door. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, we have two members absent, Steve Lamont and Mike Sutton, are both out. We do have a quorum. Anyone have a conflict of interest to declare on any item? Motion to approve the consent agenda? Seconded by Joel. All those in favor? Thank you. We have two sets of minutes. The first is our meeting on May 13th, and the second is the public hearing we had on the June 11 referendum item that was held on May 12th. So let's do them one at a time. Motion on the May 13th meeting?
I have one item.
Yeah, Joel.
So under the public hearing, it says Sean Hadley is working with select board members, Joel and Steve, to get a cooling center up and running over Foxcroft.
Yeah.
That's not really how that played out. The Climate Action Committee asked me and Steve to try to head the CERT program, and they're already working on the cooling part of it.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that's clarified.
And that's for the public hearing?
Yes.
That's all. All right. We'll get the May 13th meeting done, and then we'll make note of that.
Yep.
Okay. So we do have a motion in a second on May 13th.
I move to approve the May 13th.
Okay. And second is last.
Sure.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay. And then the special meeting for the public hearing on May 20th. Did you catch Joel's comment on that?
Mine was from May 13th.
Oh, yours from May 13th?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
All right. And you want to repeat that?
Yeah, it's just under the public section. It says Sean is working with the select board members, Joel and Steve, to get the cooling centers up and running. The Climate Action Committee has been the one fielding that, and then they asked us to help with development of certain.
Right, with that particular aspect.
Right, yeah. So they're under the same umbrella, but technically slightly different. I'll make sure that's clear.
Thank you. All right, so motion to approve the public hearing notes. And second, Joel. Second by Joel. All of them. Thank you. We have items from the Board of Assessors, including some abatement requests, personal taxes, and then some taxes that are considered uncollectible. Now, one of the abatement requests is from Barry Hudson.
Yeah.
Would you like to speak to this tonight, Barry? Is that correct?
I will.
All right. You have the floor.
Thank you.
My name is Barry Hutchins. I no longer reside technically at 72 Lincoln Street. 68 Lincoln Street. I apologize.
You're glad you don't.
Forget that,
You're glad you don't
properties
live
on my
in
mind.
22, right? Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Technically, it's 236 Highland Road that I reside
Oh.
at now.
But you still live in Dover-Foxcroft.
I do,
That's
yes,
all.
yes. I did take part in the abatement hearing, and I appreciate the time I was given. I was able to be heard at that hearing, and I appreciate being able to be heard. But I sent an email to the members of the board that were present, Mrs. Sear and Mrs. Conroy, that were present at the hearing. I don't know if it was
That was
handed out
distributed to all
and to
members.
Mr. Kluge as well.
Yeah.
What I wanted to just voice my concerns on that were, and I won't be as long-winded as the email may have seemed, but I
Well,
just want
you
to
have
tell
only
them.
3 minutes to talk.
Okay, all right. So the assessor, some points that he made that I had a bit of conflict with, and conflict not in anger, but just that I wanted to readdress with you, the entire board, was number one. Well, I'll start with number two. Number one really isn't something that I'm going to bring up. Number two is that the assessor continuously brought up the term, and I think I'm going to miss it here, visual unsightliness in referring to 72 Lincoln Street. And he kept saying that visual unsightliness. And I'd asked the two board members that were present if they know the proper term that he was referring to, please correct me. But my impression was that he was referring to if a property is just visually not nice, aesthetically not pleasing, that's not grounds to ask for an abatement. If you live next door to a property like that. I agree with that 100%. Just because a house next to you is ugly, you can't ask for lowering of taxes. I totally agree with that. He kept referencing that term. I responded to that in the hearing. And the way I responded was that 72 Lincoln Street, which is the basis for my application for abatement, is not deemed as an aesthetically unpleasing property or visually unpleasing property. It's deemed by this town code enforcement officer as a dangerous building. And if you go further, our town council has approved that. Our select board, I know not all members present, but the select board as a whole further approved it and placed an order, which I think against 72 Lincoln Street, which may be the only house in this town that has such an order against its deed. I don't know. Okay. So,
More than we would like.
oh, well, I'm sorry to actually hear that, but it's a pretty strong statement for the town to have deemed that property to be dangerous. That was the basis for me requesting an abatement against my taxes. And it wasn't, and I wanted to point out that it wasn't just the day that the town placed that order that I ran out and requested an abatement. I say I, but I'm obviously married. My wife is backing this as well. We continuously requested that action be taken on that property. Nothing was ever done. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go in and I'm going to ask for my taxes to be lowered based on that house. If it's a dangerous property deemed by the house, and if I lose my voice, my allergies are bad right now. So I requested it. I filed it with the town and I made the request. I filed it at 50%, expecting for the assessor to come back at a lower percentage. He didn't. So he just recommended denial of the abatement completely. So that was one thing. My first point was that he continuously brought up a visual appearance of the house when that's not what the order states at all. It's a dangerous building. The third issue that I had on it, excuse me. I'm not quite sure which house this would be. His personal opinion. He referred to when he drove by the home that his personal opinion of 72 Lincoln Street was that it was not dangerous. I respectfully would rather not view his opinion in regards to whether that property is dangerous or not. It's not what we pay the assessor for. We pay the code enforcement officer to determine whether a property in town is dangerous, if it's inhabitable, things of that nature. Our code enforcement officer has already made that decision. So that should not have even have come up in that hearing. That should not have even, in my opinion, it shouldn't have been relevant in his decision-making process. He obviously used it in his decision-making process. He used it in the hearing when he commented on when he drove by, it didn't look dangerous to him. The number fourth issue, select person Sear made a very good comment in what I thought were your closing arguments. No rodent and I may have misquoted you on this, vagrant issues with the property. We rent the property out now. Back in April, I believe it was. We had complaints from our tenants of rodent infestation at our property at 68 Lincoln Street, to the point where we now pay Orkin to mediate that issue. That 68 Lincoln Street that we own, we maintain it at a level, there shouldn't be a rodent infestation. I can just tell you that. The Orkin people themselves commented on the vacant property next door to it. That's 72 Lincoln Street. I can try and get you something in writing. But beyond that, that's all I can tell you on that. Number 5, the town assessor commented that in the history of doing assessing, he's never seen a home value depreciate 50% due to a structure next to it, such as what I was asking for. I gave him a case in point the night or the day of the assessment hearing. Our purchase of 68 Lincoln Street. It listed for $135,000. We paid roughly $70,000 for the house. That was not the only factor, but it was a huge factor. It was because 72 Lincoln Street sat right next to it, and it worked. We got it for the price we wanted it for. The abatement we are requesting, yes, I would love to have my taxes lowered, but it's not the only reason that we filed for that abatement. I have asked and I have asked for something to be done with that house, and nothing is being done. And I'll ask you, I guess in closing, to go back and review town minutes, select board minutes, all the way back to roughly the beginning of 2021, when this all started. With I forget the original people's name, the lady that lived, Alberta Lucetta was her name. 30 years, she admitted she was never going to do anything with that house because no one was ever going to force her to. On February 28th of 2022, our town manager, Jack Kluge, is quoted in the town minutes as stating the town is going to remove the structure at 72 Lincoln Street this week. But the weather may be an issue. Clearly, the town was going to knock that house down in February of 2022. Less than a month later, Ben Cabot bought that house. He made promises to this board. He didn't follow through on them. What's the difference? So I'm asking, why is that house still standing? And why am I still taxed at the same rate? That is all I'm asking you. And I'm asking you to look at this fairly. And you, Mr. Lazat, made a comment on this to, I think there were Pleasant Street people in here. You made a comment that the abutters' properties are devalued with these homes sitting next to them. You got to look at this realistically. If the houses are going to be allowed to stand and this board is not going to take any action, when do the residents that have to look at them every day get to come in here and say, we're paying the tax as though they're not sitting there? Do something. So that's all I'm asking you to do. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, and we could talk about the whole process for declaring a building unsafe, uninhabitable, and that's the process is designed not to move slowly so that the town does not take the property from people. So in this particular instance, our code enforcement officer could not be here tonight to discuss the particular problem at 72 Lincoln Street.
Right.
Jack, you talked with Brian, and what was his thought on that?
So, he's been in communication with the property owner recently and on a pretty regular basis. And there are things being done now that weren't being done necessarily 6 months ago. And Brian will be at our next meeting to bring us more up to date on what information he has on it. But it's true, there was a sort of a process of the town, working with various owners to resolve the issue of 72 Lincoln Street. The original owner, the original dangerous building hearing, really the whole topic of that was about the interest that that original owner had in trying to sell the property to someone that would hopefully improve the property. The board was willing to allow that to happen and allow for some timeframes to be set for things to be done by the new owner, which never materialized. And then there came a point where there was not any real indication that anything was going to happen. The town was in planning that we could exercise our right to remove the structure. That was our right since we declared the dangerous building. We could go in and remove it. We were preparing for that, outcome. And then we had another person approach that owner and the board about being allowed to own it and doing improvements. And then at that time, the board was willing to allow that owner to have an opportunity to do it. And I think, it's probably, a very good time to understand where that is in the big scheme of things and what may have already been done, what's left to do, and kind of check in on that for sure.
So some work has been done. I mean, they did tear down the entire back of that building. They stabilized the remaining part. I understand your frustrations. I'm frustrated with every derelict building in this town that sits in otherwise nice neighborhoods and creates that constant friction for budding property owners. I used to have a couple of houses in my neighborhood that were like that. They were both eventually fixed up, and now you wouldn't know that I thought they should have been torn down 10 years ago, but they're now fixed up and people are living in them. I would say that my response is that I think the root cause of the problem here is not that necessarily that your property is overvalued. The root cause of the problem is that the cleanup of the property next to you has not gone as swiftly as we would hope it would. And that's something that, we're at the mercy of the property owner, who does seem to have been doing some more there, recently. But Cindy and Jane are both on the assessing committee. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I would say that, Bill, our assessor, has decades of experience and, provides wonderful guidance to us, I think. And so I feel like there are two separate processes going on here. There's the dangerous building, and it's going to be corrected to our satisfaction, even though it's many years later than we hoped. And then there's your abatement request. So they're separate. They don't feel separate to you having it there, and not renting that, but they are really separate, standards by which we have to proceed. And, I think that, Bill really helped us think about, okay, so what about all these other buildings? What about Union Street and the people who just bought the property next to Aaron's home and all of those places? If we were to abate based on a neighboring home, we'd have multiple big abatements before us. So the other thing we learned was that, an abatement cannot go back multiple years. And so that's just another point, that Barry's aware of now. So I think the primary issue for us is what is Ben doing and how swiftly is it going to happen? And how do we create a timeline to hold them accountable for that? So I would say that was the gist of our time with Bill, who was very forthright and really clear about this thing. And that's his confession, and that's what we said to do. So
You concur, Jane, with the?
with some of it, I also had but an observation is that we have taken some action. And I believe one of the outcomes is we need to beef up what legal grounds we have with this individual. I have asked at two separate meetings when the owner in front of us said he'd be living in the fall. My question was, which fall? It's been 3 now. And again, we have identified some other dangerous buildings and, are told, oh, we're going to rebuild, and there are still rocks on it. So again, we don't have control over what the owner does. No different than individuals, I don't like how you mow your lawn. Sorry, but, and so again, I think if we're pursuing legal, at least new legal understanding of where we stand on that property with that owner, I hope to see progress.
This is one of 5 properties, I believe, that we have right now that the code enforcement officer.
Yeah, Pleasant Street,
has got going.
Union Road, Grange, Clinton, 4.
Yeah, Grove.
Norton Hill.
Grove.
And that's a illegal company.
Yeah, right, but, yeah,
Yeah.
still a neighborhood I saw. Polite way of putting it. Yeah,
Tom,
I'm right.
can I speak?
Yeah.
Or do you mind if I speak?
I would welcome your thoughts.
I was here when that was all going on, Barry and the building and all that. I was out in the audience for the whole thing, so I do sort of recall it. But my main question is along the kind of terminology and technology. I was wondering because the present owner, who was standing here and said, I'll do a lot of work, he went in and did some work. At that point, when the barn came down and the building was sealed, did the dangerous building code come off it? And it hasn't gone back on yet. We're just in the, I know what it looks like. I've driven by, I know, but the dangerous building was removed. And now we're back here again.
So the code enforcement office still categorize that as a dangerous building, it does not?
That's,
No.
Okay.
no,
Danny would know, I said, not me.
And you used to work in the CEO's office.
so I think that's
Yeah.
exactly what, I think that's exactly what Brian's gonna talk with us about at our next meeting, is how the code office views that building right now, because it is much different from that original order where there was a barn that was, you could observe it leaning, you know, and that was a priority for removing it. It was, I think, not fully removed, you know, mostly removed and then finally fully removed. I understand that there's been some structural work already, and so, it may still be considered dangerous. It very well may not still be considered dangerous, where, to James' point, it may be a case where the board, revisits the order itself, and discusses whether it remains categorized as a dangerous. Because that's the crux of a dangerous building, is it dangerous, you know, have those conditions been relieved? Even though it still might be unsightly, even though it still might, you know, not be habitable, is it dangerous? That's a key question.
But, and Brian does feel that Mr. Cabot is making good faith efforts, I guess, to continue the project?
He's made recent efforts, observable efforts.
What?
And he's gonna talk about that. I'm not prepared to talk about that, but in general, there's been some recent activity.
Yeah. Other comments from board?
I just think that the last time we spoke about it when Ryan was here, he said we have to start over.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry. What'd you say, ma'am?
That we would have to start over with that property. So we can clarify that with someone who's here. But it was in response to your bringing it forward, John, that Ryan said, you know, kind of off track with that original designation and the legal process for it. And so if we were to bring it back, we'd have to start over. So,
And it might be helpful to have John, and also to kind of talk through, you know, some of the technical parts of that.
And is our assessor on the Zoom?
He is not,
Okay.
on Bill's one.
All right, so I mean, as I said before, I sympathize with you. I mean, it's a pain for the board to deal with like half a dozen houses in this community that have reached that stage. This one has been festering for 3 years before I even became a member of the board. It's been covered intensively in the news, and it's continuing frustration for all of us. But I think as Cindy said, that's a separate issue from your tax abatement request. I would like to get the building at 72 Lincoln Street, your neighbor, cleaned up. If that happens, I don't see any rationale for a tax abatement award to you. And in fact, the recommendation of the select board's assessing committee is that we not grant the abatement to you, and that's basically the issue before us, of those who accept that recommendation. That you're intending formal vote to be taken to accept the recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, you can do that separately or as part of the, all the recommendations.
I think they're all clustered together. So a motion to accept the recommendations of the committee on the items before us under the board would be appropriate this time.
well, I would move that.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Move the second, other discussion on this.
Can I ask a question? Would it not be pertinent, if that's the right word? And I know we're talking about them being separate, but to wait and hear what Brian says next week, or that's really a separate issue?
What do you thoughts on that?
So the separateness of it is, what an assessor does is tries to assess what the marketplace would value a property at, given the neighborhood. And this is something Bill talked about, is that they consider the neighborhood as a whole, and not singularly necessarily one property. And so one of the things that Bill told the committee was that the street, the neighborhood as a whole, in his opinion, did not devalue the property lower than what it's assessed for. So that's the basis of you know, him not recommending the abatement, is that the marketplace, sales of comparable properties, you know, the neighborhood as a whole, did not warrant a reduction of value.
Lincoln
from-
Street is not a distressed neighborhood, that one property there that's continuing irritant to you, everyone else on the street, and to all of us on this select.
Those are the points they made.
Yeah, and I, as a county commissioner and later as a county manager, the county board served as the board of appeals for abatements requests that are rejected. I cannot remember a similar case like this coming to the county level and if I was still wearing that particular hat, I would say the remedy here is to clean up 72 Lincoln Street. And that's what I think we should pour our efforts into. And the code enforcement officer attends our next meeting on June 17th. That's what I'd like to have a discussion on, is to get that moving forward. He has made some progress with the data, but obviously we'd like to see the project actually completed in 3 years. Should be enough to get that done, I would think.
So is the current owner obligated to come to that meeting?
No, they're not obligated to come, I mean, they're technically never obligated to come, but if we, were to hold a dangerous building hearing, there's always in their interest to come. And, they might be willing to come, and we're certainly willing to invite them and make them aware. And, that would be certainly, informative to hear directly from the.
Yeah, I think he should be invited. Yes, Paul.
I understand they're separate things, and Barry, I feel for you. I hear exactly what you're saying. 'Cause everybody in this room who has looked at houses, bought houses, sold houses, is very well aware that there's like 3 entities controlling all of this, and none of them ever line up. And a building of that nature that is in disrepair or even has a reputation absolutely impacts the selling or buying power for the parties involved. It just does, because let's be real, if you have a budget, you go online and you're like, oh, this home is great, and the price is too good to be true, what's the first thing that goes into your head?
No.
What is around it making it be this price?
Right.
What's going on? And I understand that's not assessment value, right? That's what am I willing to pay for this home? But that, as a homeowner, that absolutely does impact you, which when you are putting work into something, especially if you, let's say it's a rental property, right? That is something you poured your time and money into. So, I'm not comfortable voting on very specifically until the next meeting. I want to hear from everyone just kind of on where it's at, because I want to hear there's good progress coming, more progress coming. But what if we find out there isn't? What if we find out something's happened and this is as far as that building's going? I think that's a different conversation to be had at that time.
Well, if you want to act on the other assessing items and hold this in abeyance until June 17th, that would be pretty easy to do. That would just require an amendment to the motion to do that if you're willing.
Support that.
You would support that amendment. So why don't we have a motion on to amend that to that effect? Dan, you'll make that motion to act on the other items, to approve the recommendations of the assessment on every item except for Mr. Hudson's abatement. We'll take that up again on June 17th. Cindy, you'll second that?
I will.
Okay. All right. Does that meet everyone's approval?
Yeah.
All those in favor? Because there is some paperwork associated with the other items there that we need to sign tonight. So, all right, so we'll put that on the agenda for June 17th. Hopefully, Brian Bodette will be here, and we'll ask Ben Cabot to show up. So, of course, be welcome to return, and hopefully, and we'll hopefully get that resolved. I think that will be the ultimate resolution. I feel. Thank you for showing up and sharing your. All right, let's move on to open session. We do not have a public hearing tonight. We do have an open session for members of the public. Robert, do you have any items?
We have the other item of the, aged, personal property council and the board.
That's under the,
Is that under the?
that's under, yeah, basically what we did is we approved an amendment to the motion where the supplements and unaffectable council, we accepted the recommendation.
We should, I think we need to do that as a separate one, because the assessors would do the one,
Okay.
change the abatement, and then the.
So
municipal
you need a
officers.
separate motion on the supplements and a separate motion on the uncollectible.
The supplements, fine,
Okay.
under that motion, the uncollectible would be the municipal officers, vote. And, their personal property, accounts and pay taxes 2016, 17, 18, I
Yeah,
think.
so there are two accounts, in the town for personal property taxes that are recommended to be considered uncollectible due to reasons including the age, amount, and owner's status. And we need a motion to accept that recommendation.
Yeah, I would just say the committee, looked at those and agreed that, you know, let's sort of stuff for review, towards the internal.
Well, business that no longer exists is not gonna pay it back.
Right, people are gone.
Yeah.
So I would, move that we accept that. Those items as uncollectible.
Second to that, Bill?
Can I ask one
Oh,
question?
well, you, Jane,
Second.
okay, yes, go ahead. Bill.
For Sherrytown Pizza, I thought the original owners had their daughter running it when they stopped. She moved to Guilford. Now they're back doing Pizza Shack in Centerville. I didn't realize one of the owners that I mean, I ordered from them and they post they were Sherrytown. So is it
So
possible they're,
Shiretown was the, not the family member, the deceased family member of what, you know, the family continued on, with.
Okay.
But the owner of record for Shiretown is not,
okay, gotcha.
yeah. That's kind of the nuance where, you know, owners then versus owners now.
Gotcha.
And the total amount here that we're talking about on the uncollected taxes is $630 for the two items. All right, so all those in favor of that? So back to open session for the public. Does anyone in the public have any questions? All right, yes, go ahead.
Mr. Solomon?
Deb Stahl? Yeah.
Okay. Two things, actually. One is for awareness. I mean, I've been working with Mr. Kluge to set up a meeting to talk about possibly doing a traffic garden for Dover-Foxcroft. If you're not aware of what that is, it's a miniature, like, set of streets, almost like they use for the bike safety courses, things like that, that would be available for our kids to use at any time. Possibility of where they might go. We have seen, my brother is in town visiting, and he and several groups he's on has set up in several states. So we have a lot of information on it. So we're trying to set that up to talk, and then I'll talk to the other stakeholders that we're looking at. It could be good for safety for our kids. You know, there's bike issues going on. We learn the rules of the road.
So is that like a scale replica
Yes.
of the grid pattern of the streets?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right.
I mean, complete with stop signs. I mean, you can.
Like,
make
like
them
a
from-
tabletop presentation, like a
Yeah,
model
you can
railroad?
make them from very small
Yeah.
cul-de-sac
Yeah.
to big. Some schools have made them huge.
Yeah.
And local universities have gotten involved to try and make it interact. I mean, it's a lot of things.
That's an interesting idea.
But I know there's always issues with kids and biking and school growth.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And the other one probably is a little bit more tricky. You know, one of the primary reasons that are stated for taking down the Mayoral Dam is flooding issues. And under Freedom of Information Act, that I recently requested, the dates and the times the Mayo Mill gate dams were open, since 2022, 2023, and 2024 to date. The response I received from Mr. Kluge recently was the only time that those have been open was August 24, 2023, to conduct a structural condition assessment of the dam. So my question is, how can the dam be a contributing factor to flooding issues if the gates aren't being open to help abate flooding? I mean, I think it's something that y'all need to look again and how you're wording some of the things for the users to take.
Well, I think the most recent flood we had, December 18th and 19th, and one, it wasn't even forecast as a flood because the waters from the headwaters of Catskill River came in late, and that caused that to cause the flooding. But had the gates been open, I don't think we would have avoided a flood in that case, because you've seen the pictures of what water flowing over the dam on that particular event would not have made much difference at all.
Difference of opinion, but that's.
Other questions? Remark? Yes.
I just want to thank you, Joel. You're going to take a question for me during the board open session, so I appreciate you speaking on our behalf. You are, in my opinion, a better speaker than you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Jay Cano, I have two items I'd like to bring.
Sure.
One is I understand there are pictures of the river when the gates were opened and the town has possession of pictures that were given to Interflu during that study.
Yeah.
My second question is, a follow-up to Deborah on flooding. So the pictures, I have knowledge and I've talked to Mr. Buki and others. There are pictures, I'm not sure of the year, but they're fairly recent, within 7 or 8 years, of when the gates to the dam were open to do repairs. And these pictures show the level of the river, the water, the shoreline. My purpose in asking to see them and the rest of the townspeople is to get a real idea of what the river actually looks like. And, I've requested it, 3 weeks ago, followed up a couple times with emails and phone calls, and have yet any word of receiving them before the vote's taken, in time for first of all, to have a look at them.
Yeah, go ahead. Jack is the person that handles, those requests for information.
I think he has two questions, but I don't want to take his time.
All right.
I'll circle back.
All right. You have a second question?
Yeah.
Go along with that one?
No, it doesn't go on with that one. It has to do with the flooding.
Okay.
The flooding issue seems to me to be a separate item that we should consider rather than folding it into the dam referendum. For example, I heard Mr. Lazard say in a town meeting here, not a town meeting, a board meeting, that during the flood of '87, he was really concerned, and I probably had reason to be, of flooding on Pine Street. And recent floods where the town roads had been closed.
Right.
My question is, what have we done as a town to eliminate any of the flooding, such as raising the riverbank, opening the floodgate, and the floodgate terminology may be a little off. I don't know what they call it. Anyway, open the gate. The dam referendum, if it passes and the dam's removed, we're talking 20, 28, 27 before anything's done. Plenty of time for more flooding to occur. My sense of it is that there's something that we could do that's sensible, cost effective, to mitigate flooding, then we should pursue that.
I agree, which is the main reason I'm in favor of removing the dam is the flooding issue. Actually, I don't care a whole lot about the fish. I have nothing against fish and fish passage issues associated with that dam. But my main question is, how can we know that we have a public safety problem that cuts our Dover-Foxcroft in two and not do something about it? But what has been recommended to us by the engineers from Interflu is the number one thing you can do to reduce flooding danger in Dover-Foxcroft is to lower the level of the water in the impoundment behind the dam. Taking down the dam is the way to do that. The other issue that you talk about, building a wall along the riverbank, the root cause is the water level is too high. So keeping the water level high and then spending millions more to build a wall or a dike along the riverbank is just spending an incredible amount of money without getting at the root cause of the problem. I would also point out that flooding occurs on both South Street and Pine Street, which are both state aid roads. So the town of Dover-Foxcroft does not have ultimate control over those roads, especially Route 7, South Street. We can't put a dike along South Street without the Department of Transportation from the state approving that. And I doubt that they would do that.
I'm making some assumptions that I'm talking about millions of dollars and raising the riverbank, creating a dike. When obviously, well, you tell me, do you have personal knowledge of anything that's been looked at? Has anybody set up a transit to see when the water level reaches Pine Street, how much earth and
But to get to your question, Mr. Arnold, you're,
have to be created to eliminate the water coming into you and.
yeah, I mean,
you're
we
talking
saw
about
the,
$1
the answer is yes. The Interfluve engineering firm has come up with really concrete data on when the flood level, begins. And that is easily monitored through the US Geological Survey, river gauge that shows when that happens. And it happened on December 18th. The, flood level, when it reached 15 feet, that's the flood stage. And that's when the water came right up the boat launch at the Chamber of Commerce building, flooded all of Lower Pine Street and all of South Street and that entire intersection, which cut the town in half. So you could build a dike along there that would keep the water from coming onto the road. Are you saying that that's your preferred solution to the problem of flooding?
If the only solution is to take out the dam, yes, certainly, no question.
Yeah.
We worked with the contractor over there in Robinson, Seattle. He has benchmark.
Yeah.
Where he surveyed and got elevation. For the river that comes up and up, to come onto the street at the center line of Pine Street, would take approximately 2.5 to 3 feet of earth and dam. And the biggest area is 15-foot wide boat launch. That doesn't translate to millions of dollars. It doesn't translate to dikes or whatever terminology you want to use. But it seems to me, for the simpler matter it is to mitigate flooding, even along the mill side. That's certainly something that's within our control, and frankly, we owe it to the property owners and ourselves to look at that.
So you would favor building a wall to keep the water rising from the river and overtopping its banks? Is that your solution to the problem? But that's what you just said. I think I'm hearing that.
It's not my solution, but it's something that could prevent more flooding between now and the resolution of the dam. If your answer to eliminating flooding is to remove the dam, that's kind of a no-brainer.
Well, it is a no-brainer because we could get grant funds that would pay to remove the dam without any impact on the Dover-Foxcroft tax rate, and to build a wall or dike or berm or whatever you want to call it would not be inexpensive. And the money for that would have to come from our taxes. So it doesn't get at the root cause of the flooding, which is the elevated water level in the environment.
There are approximately 2,500 feet of shoreline in the cove that floods, not that flood, that exists from the community building around Pine Street and as you start up the hill where the flooding occurs. There's an easy way to calculate how much earth, how much ground would it take to build the river, the edge of the river up to match into the existing bank, not a dike, to match into the existing bank, taper it back to the road, edge of the road, so it was aesthetically pleasing, useful for.
And you don't think that would require removal of the boat launch area and eliminate all public access to the river?
We should insist that. But if what you just said is true, the water is rushing up the boat launch area. Why should we as citizens allow that boat launch area to even be there?
Because we want to give the public access to the Piscataquis River. Now the only people who have access to the Piscataquis River are those people who have properties abutting the river on Pine Street and West Main Street. Why should we spend public money from our tax base to benefit private ownership of riverfront property when getting rid of the dam would increase public access to the entire river? So I think we have a difference of opinion that will not be resolved tonight. Okay, yes, I'm right.
In hearing what Jake is saying, and yep, it does make sense. Let's, spend $2 million to fix over by Robinson's, lift the road. The state does this and that, but it never gets away from the $6 or $8 million that we need to fix up the dam. That's still the same problem. We've still got the $6 or $8 million that we need to spend to fix the dam, plus more money to alleviate any future flooding at the time.
To build a wall.
I think Jake's idea is wonderful, but it doesn't take away from the $8 million that we need to fix up the dam, which is coming out of Dover taxpayers' money. I hear what he's saying, and I'm sure we've looked at that. I'm sure we've looked at raising South Street, but we still have to fix the dam, $6 or $8 million.
If you don't want to remove it, you have to fix it.
Yeah.
If you want to fix it, then you're passing along an enormous increase in the tax base to the next generation of Dover-Foxcroft residents. And I can't possibly support that. I can't possibly support that. Any other questions from the public? Yes, Barry?
On that, from an economic standpoint, I support, I don't know if it's the entire board's position, but I support what's being said, I think, from what I'm hearing from the board, that the dam is not economically viable as it stands. And I support removing it. I'm saying that publicly. But from a historical standpoint, and the appearance of it, I have a tremendous amount of respect for Mr. Arno and what he says regarding the dam. And I get that view of it, and I wish that we could make that work. I just don't think that economically that we're going to be able to do that. And I wish that we could.
You just summarized the board's position. I mean, spending $8 million to repair an obsolete dam makes no sense. Sorry. Mr. Arnold, we have new policy now for public comment, so you've exceeded the time available to any individual.
This is it was in response to the
Yeah,
pictures
yeah.
I thought.
Yeah.
Whenever, so I just got them yesterday. There was the drawdown that, Mr. Arnold was talking about was, 2019. There were a couple different things going on. There was some, dam and hydro building assessment work being done. At the same time, we were, upgrading the dry hydrant on the, other side of the mill. So we drew it down. Many pictures were taken that day. What I'd like to do is get them up on the project website so that anybody can just go and go through the file and see. They're very immediate to the dam, and you can see, from the dam perspective, up and downstream. So, yeah.
And the Mail Mill Dam Study website also has the entire engineering bathymetric study, which shows all the water levels in the dam on the river itself under pretty much every possible conceivable scenario. So that information has been available to the public for half a year now. Other members of the public that have anything to say? All right, we'll close the public session comments. And we'll go to select board open session. Members of the board, Cindy?
Yeah, I just wanted, on the heels of this conversation, to say that there is, a planned, walk, Riverside Walk, to look at what does the river look like in its natural state at Browns Mill Park on the 8th, meeting at 9 o'clock. And there'll be, a fisheries biologist person there and another representative of state government. So I wanted to make sure people know about that. And also, I just wanted to share, I understand that the river in August and September, when it's very dry, will not have a lot of water in it. And today I rode along the river road in Quebec, and looked out over the beautiful river and in its natural state, undammed. And it's one of the most beautiful things for all of us to enjoy every day. So there will be seasonal ebbs and flows, but, I just want to point out that we have a way to observe the river in its natural state upriver towards Abbott. Absolutely beautiful with all the gravel bars, and there's some elm trees actually growing in the gravel. And down towards Eastover and Quebec where it's undammed. Absolutely beautiful. So let's remember, we have access to see what the river's going to look like. That we don't have to wonder about it. Just wanted to point that out. One other thing I wanted to share is how lovely our Memorial Day observance was, I think, here in Dover. That morning when I was watching it rain and thinking, is this even gonna happen? I had my doubts that people would show up to be in the parade or observe the parade, and we had a wonderful turnout. So just really appreciative of that. And it made my heart full and proud to be a citizen of Dover-Foxcroft. So
You're here.
thank you.
Other comments? Emery?
Do you want to go?
Go ahead.
Number one is, first up, my apologies for the Memorial Day service.
You were there.
I happen to be a man of habit of creature. I never once gave the thought of participating in the parade. I parked my car in the same place. I walked down to the bridge in the same place when the parade went by, and then we walked up and I stood in the same place at the memorial, at the monument. But when I saw Cindy and she said, "Why aren't you out here?" I thought, I don't know why I'm not out here. I would have. I was in the alumni parade very happily. I didn't give it a thought, so I apologize. But I was there.
Next year you can walk with the rest of
We'll
them.
come.
We'll let you carry the
We'll get
select
you.
board flag.
Thank you.
you.
And number two is easy clarification. I just drove out to the lake tonight, and the marina on the left-hand side, the circle, the turning circle, is that town-owned property or is that state?
Town.
Because
Yeah.
that gravel circle could use a grader run around it. Unless we keep it potholed to keep the speed down, which I would understand. But if you catch
We
it by surprise,
maintain that. We maintain.
I
that
think
whole
it could
area.
before summer.
Perhaps a
gets
grader be, yeah, would be good.
a once around, but I'm sorry, that's me.
Other comments?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay, I have a list.
You have a list, okay.
Was there a counter on the Board Eddy Road by the bridge, kind of the Dexter end? A resident was asking, in the summer?
There might have been, but we don't put counters out, so the DOT might have put one out and they don't tell us to put one out. So I can't confirm.
Don't know why. But that's our road, correct?
Board A, yeah.
But the bridge might be the issue. That's why I guess, anyway. I'll share that with the person.
Sometimes they, like, I know when they did a large culvert on Route 7, they were looking at where they were gonna detour. So they might look at those cut throughs as to like, how much traffic is there, in case they had to put traffic on there for some reason. Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm on a pattern here. And then noticing on Route 15 coming into town, there's a paving warning.
Yeah.
What's happening?
So the state is gonna do a very, very thin skim coat of pavement on East Main Street. From, I believe, Essex Street, across the bridge. But it's to get by. They're gonna do, next year, there's gonna be a lot of digging. Okay, they're gonna widen the intersection, the water district's gonna upgrade water mains in the intersection of Route 7 and East Main. There's gonna be a lot of digging. And then in 2026, the plan is to come and do what they call a mill fill. So basically grind off a couple inches of pavement, the stuff they're putting down now, and down some of the stuff that's on there now. and do a more longer term treatment. But they just don't want to do that and then be digging it up in 2025. They don't want to do nothing now. So that's, I think, gonna be next week. They're gonna be doing that.
And then, was I dreaming, or did we say that we were going to notify people of road work? And part B of that was, do we have a paving list for this year?
We do, and once I know when the contractor is planning to be where or be in town for that group of roads, then I can do a post on the Facebook page, just to tell people what we're doing. And I'm expecting that to be, relatively soon, because the contractor wanted us to be on the front end of pretty much all their work. Yeah.
Cool.
So first, Sean and the group he's a part of, they asked a question and have a great answer for. So we have committees, we have groups, we have meetings, and there's a little confusion on what is a public meeting and what is not. So if there's a committee that needs to, it's not open to the public, is why, first off, and if they can come, of course, either they can speak or not speak. I understand that. But there's a lot of people who would like to see very easy on a website or somewhere it says, here are the committees, here's what they're responsible for, here are the members, and it's actually on the schedule. Because it seems like we do have some stuff on our schedule, but when they go in and they find out this committee met on a Thursday night or something, there's nothing on the schedule, no one knows about it. We can't expect the public to attend or be a part if they're not able to easily find what's going on or where. And I think we have a lot of people showing interest in wanting to come to some of these things and be part of the discussion. So can we kind of go over that or find an easier way to make this more understandable?
So there's two links on the homepage. There's three things on the homepage, but there's two links on the homepage. It says upcoming meetings. If you click on the right sidebar where it says green, upcoming meetings, you go to the page, it has all the select board, public hearings, committee meetings, it's all there. Then there's another link in the middle of the page that says for upcoming meetings, click here. And then there's the calendar. So I think everything gets put on, all the committee meetings get put on upcoming meetings page. Not everything on the upcoming meetings page makes its way to the calendar. That's just gets overlooked sometimes. It always goes on the upcoming meetings. I would always say just check both. If we're trying to get stuff on the calendar, if we miss it, check both. It's going to be one or the other. And everything's really a public meeting. I mean, I can't think of an example of anything that's not a public meeting, because if there's a part of a meeting that's not public, it's going to start out public and then say, we're going to executive session. Right. So there's nothing really not public. You know what I mean? Select board meetings, by just by the way you've chosen to set them up, there's open sessions. Committee meetings, they're not really designed to be open sessions. They're designed for basically advisory work. So every subcommittee is going to talk about an issue, before it hits the agenda, and there'll be a recommendation, similar to like the assessment and abatements. They discuss abatement requests, hear from people, and then come up with a recommendation. When it's an agenda item, full board discusses it, makes a decision. That's really what the committees are doing.
The composition of each select board committee is also on the website.
If the composition of the committees isn't on the select board page, we can put it there.
Yeah.
They just click on select board. If it's not on there, I don't remember.
And that is handed out every year at our organizational meeting.
Yeah, we can just post that
Yeah.
sheet of paper that lists, the going committee. That's easy.
And all those meetings have minutes, they get documented.
So as far as standalone, we really don't have standalone minutes for the committees. They're in our minutes because we do a committee report, and the recommendations are on our agenda and then become part of our meeting. It's a standalone set. We don't have a recorder go to committees.
So people have been a little upset that they feel like the only content being posted by the town about the dam is pro removal, like it's very one-sided. And I understand the town's position is that they're in favor of moving the dam at this point based on everything that's gone on. But I'm just putting it out there as a thought, because I don't want to feel like we're alienating the group of people that obviously want to save the dam. So if there's content being put out, that shows that maybe another town was able to do it and how they did it. Maybe that'll help alleviate some of the stress that people feel from this. It's not saying we are changing the town's mind on where it goes, but, I don't want them to look at it like their voice doesn't matter.
I think that's a larger question, in terms of what our communications is, you know, in terms of the town, and, you know, it's a larger question, because the question really is the messaging that the town puts out is messaging that is from the town. There's messaging from all community perspectives on various places on social media. But it's really gonna be a question, I think, for the board and subcommittees or whatever to talk about is the messaging that goes out on town-operated social media platforms. What is that? And right now, that's the position of the board on that issue. So I think that's a big question, but it's, I think, something that's gotta be really thought about and kind of, you know, addressed. Gotcha.
Can I comment on it?
Yes.
I find that a little bit, and not funny or any, I've been thinking for months how, to me, it feels like the group that is for saving the dam and that whole aspect of it has plenty of say in the public, yet the town and or the board, I've always felt like, well, we can't say anything, because if we did say something, we're spending town money to say something, and that would be wrong. So I've often thought that the town side or the select board, town, whatever side is for removing the dam, it's hard to get information out that's just positive, good information, because it makes it look like we're being biased or spending money to be biased. So I just find that whole thing just so awkward. I mean, there are nice new signs up around town. I mean, we can't go out and buy $500 worth of signs to go the other side, because wouldn't we be tarred and feathered for doing that? And it's sort of the same thing.
We're being held to a standard of total transparency to protect the select board, but people who want to keep the dam, you can't even become a member of their Facebook group unless you pass the ideological purity.
That's probably maybe another story.
Well, I mean, yeah, but you can't have the total transparency from us and then not provide any transparency for yourself and not have any of your postings be even readable if you're not a member of that group.
So
And
it
we
is a
can't
complicated.
It is.
Well, and to me, any person can contact any one of us on any issue. You don't have to wait for a committee. You don't have to wait for this meeting. You pick up the phone and you call, or you call Jack. Easy as that, people.
Other comments?
Yeah, Sebec Lake, we're getting to that season, and I know there could be 1,000 people on the beach one day and 2 the next day, depending. People just said they're hoping that it smells better this year. Sometimes it's a bit of an odor from, I guess, the bathrooms or something, so I'm just putting it out there. I know that.
Talking about the town beaches?
Yes.
Particularly?
Yeah. So I just want to make sure we're aware that they're hoping that whatever rotation we have can keep up, because I think that's the big thing is it's kind of ebb and flow. You don't know if everyone shows up one day or
Right,
not.
it's dependent on the volume of people
Right.
using the facility.
So-
right?
Yeah, I mean, we have those, portable toilets and they, on the schedule is once a week. And if we are just absolutely overflowing for a whole weekend, you know, a Saturday, you know, Friday afternoon, Saturday and Sunday, it's probably gonna be right by Monday.
Yeah,
And
that's
they're gonna switch them out on Wednesday. But I don't think that's the norm. I think that's a pretty, you know, sporadic thing. But, we've got several there, so, you know, I'm hoping that we never run out of sort of presentable, usable portable toilets, you know, ever.
And we,
Can I add to that? So I didn't wait for you. So
Oh,
is that all right?
Perfectly fine.
I know that in budget advisory and this year as well, the talk of the public beach comes up, and it's been asked before about are there future plans for the beach? I mean, it is a beautiful public space. Not every town has one. We have a public beach. Do we have a, restoration program for that? The toilets, the kiosks, the cleanliness, the lifeguarding, et cetera.
Parking lot repaved.
The parking lot
Is
repaving.
on the schedule.
And so it does get spoken about. But again, it's kind of like the old days when I would say, can we make sure Monument Square is mowed before we have the presentation? Because it doesn't look right if we don't. So if we get an inundated weekend, I mean, there must be a number of people can call to say, not just that the toilets are full, but the beach is due for somebody to come out and empty the trash, check the toilets, pick up the litter, whatever it may be, which hopefully will lead on to, we need to preserve that space and money needs to be spent on the beach. Not everybody has access to a camp. So,
And I know that the grounds crew works really hard to try to keep the beach, clean. They're busy trying to keep the beach clean because it does, it gets used. And the parking lot is viewed as something that section of Cotton Brook Road is just that short paved section from Greeley's Lane Road to the end where it turns to dirt. It's in horrible shape. So when we reclaim that section of pavement, that would be the time just to do the parking lot as part of that same job. But as far as bigger plans for, major improvements to the beach, we've not drawn those up. I think that, with the state park, close to us, we kind of split the beach, use. And so I think we get the lesser amount of use. But there's certainly things we can do. We want to keep everything that we have in good shape. As far as adding new things, then we'll talk about that.
I want to make sure that Joel, did you finish?
I think you're responding to the beach.
Yeah,
beach.
just thinking if we could, be intentional about putting that on the recreation committee, agenda for the near future to really focus on the beach and what a wonderful resource it is for our community and making a longer term plan for staffing and caring for it. I think would be a good idea.
So now set the beach to be taken care of. You get more stuff?
The new town signs we have, back in I guess, I don't remember when, but you drive into some towns, and you have the welcome to this town sign, and it says like Rotary Club, Kiwanis Club, you have these things attached. Are we still doing that? Is that still an option for businesses or nonprofits as a way of they have a yearly fee to have a sign that fits a certain size and that helps cover the cost of the sign, or if it gets damaged to replace it? Is that something that we do or don't do anymore?
Isn't that the Department of Transportation?
Well, it's our sign though.
It's our sign.
It's not the state sign. It's like the welcome to Dover-Foxcroft sign.
Some
And a lot of
communities,
and-
some communities have all the service groups
Right,
have a.
Right.
Kiwanis has always had its own signs on the roads.
Right.
coming into town. I'm not sure what other service organizations might want to do.
Well, yeah, I'm just thinking if it was an option for us to put a fund together for those signs. I mean, we all know in the winter anything can happen, depending on the snow and ice. So
Would we design a sign that would lend itself to adding those, I just need to see some pictures of how.
Yeah, but when you come into Bangor, they have many more.
if they,
Many more service organizations than we do as a much larger town, but they have a little plaque that is attached to the welcome to Bangor sign that goes around the border of that. I don't see any reason why we couldn't do that if there was interest in the club.
I just feel like, like I said, if it's a way that there's a small fee each year and it covers maintenance or repair and it's, doesn't go to the taxpayer and.
But I believe the future of the Kiwanis Club is somewhat tentative.
And do we have like a festival committee? I mean, I know we have recreation and stuff like that, but I was just wondering.
Homecoming weekend.
Well, there's big talk in the town, right, about parades and all that, but I'm thinking it'd be really great. We have, the fairgrounds, we have all these things here, and I see like a resurgence of people trying to get back into what I felt like when I was a kid, where, we go out and the town gets together and they do stuff, and it's a great time. So I was kind of hoping to see if there's been a discussion about having this type of volunteer-led committee, that the town supports, where we do like a fall festival, we do a winter festival. We can even do a summer festival. The idea is to get people out, get vendors out, get people seeing what's here, and getting our kids, saying hi to each other and doing stuff, and being that little community that I think everybody, believes and knows we are at heart.
The issue with the town homecoming weekend, you have a committee that kind of is pulled together on an ad hoc basis.
Yeah, there's really been not a lot of activity with the homecoming committee this year. We don't have a parade scheduled for this year. We do have fireworks scheduled at FA this year. But we need a group of volunteers who are going to kind of pick that effort back up for homecoming weekend activities, parade planning, stuff like that. It started out in '97 as a volunteer committee. I mean, the town always has a role, we have, the public safety, the parade, planning aspect of it, but as far as, the activities itself, recruiting the parade units and all that stuff and fundraising, we need an active volunteer committee to really get that back on track. For sure. And, an example of just an absolutely great volunteer committee that we have is hometown holidays. I mean, they start planning in the fall, pretty early. And they put on a Christmas parade and stuff going on all over town, and kudos to them. And that's the kind of effort, that we gotta try to pull together for, homecoming or whatever summertime.
Yeah,
It does require critical mass of volunteers.
yeah, I would also just say, I think we've got winter covered, because we have hometown holidays, and it's a lovely day. And then the Whoopie Pie Festival, I don't know how many of you are involved in volunteering for that, but it requires tens of dozens of people, and
That's the center theater, and the chamber takes the lead on that.
right, and so I think that's kind of our summer festival that we have in place now. So I would just encourage people to build on what we have. The homecoming parade is a great idea, but I know just from being really involved with Whoopie Pie for many years that it takes a huge amount of energy on the part of a lot of service groups and just, our local banks and other people who spend hours and hours on making that happen. So I think we have to be really intentional about the volunteer power. If we can attract more people to do more things, that would be great.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, everyone likes festivals and events like that, but it is labor intensive, and but what you see happen is the same club who pulls that off for about 10 or 15 years, and then they get burned out, and then they say someone else needs to step in, and they look around, there's no one waiting. But you certainly can do, we have the assets to hold this. Any other comments from the board? We do have some agenda items, but
Yeah,
get to actually conduct some business here, so if anybody has anything else we have time for, otherwise let's move forward. We'll close the open session for the select board. I have a couple of adjustments to the agenda. One would be item E. We need to appoint Nanette Redmond as the deputy code enforcement officer. You've been waiting with bated breath to add that title to your name. And we also need to schedule an executive session with our town attorney to discuss the rights and duties of municipal officers, and they'll hold that at the end of the meeting. So moving on to the next item, Administrative and Assessing Committee, we just batched those items under the Board of Assessors that we talked about. We want to new business. First item is the Lincoln Street Bridge preliminary design. We have a couple of engineers from Wright Pierce who've been very patiently waiting. I'm sure they've been entertained thoroughly by the proceedings here in Dover-Foxcroft. I would welcome both these gentlemen to take a seat in the front row and
Thank you.
give us your spiel.
They're probably thinking they could.
We always appreciate discussion on infrastructure. Spirited or not. Keep it throughout this year.
It's the engineer's busy.
You just need that one last.
Does everyone see this photo from the select board?
we're gonna also screen share this on the TV, so we can try to cover everybody in one way or another. That's why we have Owen on the screen there with the headphones on.
And can Owen share screen? Does he have the ability to do that?
You hear us, Owen?
Yeah, I can hear you.
And you can screen share?
Let's see if this works.
There you go.
Great. Okay. Yeah, if you put that in, yep, that's good. I don't even need my glasses. I can see it from here. All right. So, our names are blocked, but, I'm Jason Gallant, structural engineer, by training and project manager on behalf of Wright Pierce, supporting the design phase of the, Lincoln Street Bridge project.
My name is Wesley Noon, also with Wright Pierce, and I'm the bridge engineer for this project.
Yeah, and
Introduce yourself, Owen.
yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm Owen Chaplin, project manager at Wright Pierce, focused in transportation and focused specifically on this project with the roadway design.
So we've been in, before, not the select board, but we've been in, a couple times to talk about the progress of our work. We are dedicated to delivering the design phase of this work by the end of August so that we can get into the town in a position for grant funding for next year for construction. So with that, I'll just kind of, the screen kind of describes what we're going through here, but we'll go through an overview of the project. We'll go through our preliminary description of the project, as well as some of the alternatives analysis that we've been through, get through the summary of what we expect the impacts are going to be of the project, and then where we are with preliminary design. So, and then we'll kind of open it up for questions. We'll try to keep the presentation brief. So sometimes when we do this, it's interactive questions. We'll kind of run through it quick and then have questions at the end, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah.
And then we'll be available after that. So, Owen, if you could hit to the overview there. So we've kind of described who we are. We can skip over that one. And then talking about the bridge itself. So the existing bridge, this is looking from the upstream face here. So we've got a nearly 17-foot span. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, if you want,
I've seen it before.
Okay.
So,
yeah. So the issues with this bridge are that we can actually just set that probably. Why don't we take it? Because most of it's on the screen. We can just kind of set it here, and that way folks can see it. Excuse me. Thank you. Yeah, I'm just kind of leave it here, and then most of the folks can see it. Okay, there you go. All right, so back to the show. So we got about a 17-foot span. So it's considered a minor span under 20 feet here in Maine. The latest inspection report, and these are done biannually, puts it down to a condition rating 4. So that's poor. These condition ratings are on a scale of 0 to 9 through the National Bridge Inspection Inventory. Once it gets to a 4, it doesn't mean that it's structurally deficient. It can't carry legal loads, but it elevates it to be getting reviewed for additional deficiencies more on an annual basis. And that's really what kicks it. Condition rating 4 kicks it into funding eligibility for replacement. So two-way travel, there's angle parking on the south side, parallel parking on the north side, upstream. And then we've got partial sidewalks on both sides. And as most people know, there's abutters that are close on both upstream and downstream on this. The pavement is in poor condition through that area. And there's a recurring sinkhole on the south side near Bob's Hardware. And as I mentioned, we've got businesses located on both sides. So it's a pretty tight site when we think about construction of bridges. So a little more background on the project for those that aren't familiar. So this is built in 1960 in its current configuration. We talked a little bit about the bridge inspection results. It's that all components of the structure, so the superstructure, the substructure, the deck itself are all in poor condition. Sometimes when we look at these, we see that one element deteriorates faster than the others, and we're able to rehabilitate some and replace others. But this is looking at a full replacement due to the ongoing maintenance issues. So the project was awarded some money through FEMA, through congressional direct spending. So it's got a $400,000 grant so far, and we're going to be looking for additional grant money coming in the end of the summer. Our work came into play in December of 2023 when the solicitation for proposals went out. We started work on in February of 2024. So this has been a pretty quick turnaround from a project delivery standpoint. We've gone through and done all the survey, subsurface, natural resource identification. We've done utility coordination. And where we are now is we've wrapped up the alternatives analysis, presented the preliminary design report, and we're ready to get that part behind us so we can get into permitting and final design through the rest of the summer. So the next steps will be to get in that final design. As now we've identified the impacts to the site so we can permit them, get right away. So that's all of your access rights with the abutters. And then we'll get bid documents together for construction as well as the plans to go along with that. And then the next phase after that is to solicit bids, and then it moves into construction. So that's a general overview. Talk about project limits. I think, Owen, you're going to speak to this one, right?
Yeah, so this plan you see here on the screen shows kind of our proposed improvements at a preliminary design level. So existing conditions are kind of grayed back. That's what you see behind, but the bold black lines are what we're proposing for improvements. So a lot going on here. I'll just kind of summarize it. So the paving limits of this project will extend from North Street to number 32 Lincoln Street, and that's about 300 feet of roadway. Some of that is full reconstruction of the road. Other sections are more of a partial reconstruction. But we are changing the profile of the road a little bit to improve drainage. The bridge itself is going to be replaced within the town right away. So you can see it kind of extending on the north side to the town right away, and on the south side, it's going to essentially be replaced up to the town right away. Existing parking will generally match existing. We'll formalize it a little better to make it uniform. But we're matching the same number of stalls that are out there now. As far as sidewalks, there are existing sidewalks on both sides, as Jason mentioned. We're going to improve those. We're going to improve them from an ADA accessibility standpoint. And we're also going to improve connectivity. So that's extending the sidewalks in both directions, so people walking down Lincoln Street can safely cross through the project area in front of the businesses on both sides of the road. So you'll see we've added a new crosswalk to the east, where pedestrians can, if they want to, walk across Lincoln Street safely and get to North Street on either side.
Thanks, Alan. I'll kind of get into what we looked at from a bridge perspective during the preliminary design. We looked at 4 different alternatives to rehab this bridge. They're kind of grouped in 2 different categories. Alternatives 1 and 2 are to leave the existing walls in place and build behind them with 2 different structure types. And alternatives 3 and 4 are essentially to keep the same footprint, one retaining the existing stone abutments and one completely removing them and putting a new structure in place. So kind of digging deeper into alternative 1, if you want to change the slide on. Might be a little tough to see, but so for this alternative, we're building behind the existing abutments and leaving those in place, repaired. With this, the new span length is about 44 feet. So it's pretty significantly impacting some of those approaches, some of those businesses and buildings there. So for this one, we didn't want to recommend this one just because of those impacts. And then similarly for alternative 2, it's the same span length of around 44 feet, just a different structure type. But still, there's those impacts to a butters just because we're extending that so far out. And then getting into alternative 3, this is kind of our first alternative where we're trying to keep the same footprint. So this alternative, we're looking at keeping the existing abutments in place with repairs and just building a new superstructure on top of it. So this one has a little bit of uncertainty to it just because those existing abutments are kind of unknown. They've been there for a long time. And their geometry is not exact until you start digging it up. Which kind of brings us to our final alternative, which is the preferred alternative, where we'd be looking to remove the majority of those abutments and get a new 3-sided precast bridge back in place there. But the last, say, 20 feet of those walls would stay in place and be rebuilt just because of Fox hardware right there. We can't completely take those down without impacting their building foundation. So just as a way to illustrate kind of what that 3-sided rigid frame would look like, if you look at the picture on the left, that's kind of an example of what the proposed bridge would look like. It's a 3-sided concrete frame. And then on the right-hand side, I didn't talk about it previously, but on the upstream side or the north side of the street, we'd be adding a bridge rail there for, so it's safe for pedestrians to walk without getting near the river, and then also for cars if they were to impact the river. So as part of our preliminary design, we also looked at the flows coming in under the bridge to make sure that that bridge can't handle those flows in that capacity. So we analyzed the existing structure and came up with at a 100-year storm event, we'd still have about 2.5 feet from the top of the water elevation to the bottom of the bridge. So the existing bridge is adequate to handle those flows. And with the proposed bridge that we're putting in, we're matching that same footprint. So it's going to essentially match what we're showing here at 2.5 feet. So we're not going to have any overtopping of Lincoln Street. Getting into some of the expected impacts, there's a number of utilities along Lincoln Street, as you guys know. There's some overhead utilities, as well as underground utilities, including storm drainage, water, and sewer. As part of the project, overhead utilities on the north side need to be slightly shifted to get out of the way of the sidewalk, so there's a clear walking path, and also to facilitate the installation of that new bridge, so the lines are right over the bridge as they're trying to set the bridge. As far as impacts to the underground utilities, there's a water main that crosses over the brook there. The water district is still trying to figure out exactly where that is, but that's going to be replaced as part of this construction, kind of separate from this project, but concurrent with it. Storm drainage, there's a number of catch basins along the road that are going to be removed and replaced to a new location. As Owen mentioned, some of the roadways need to be regraded, so there's new low spots. So those where the new catch basins would go. And sewer utilities are not anticipating to be impacted as those stop before the bridge crossing. They don't cross over. A little bit about construction phasing, just with it being such a busy area. We're anticipating to detour vehicle traffic during construction, but keep pedestrian traffic open so people can access both sides of Lincoln Street with the businesses there. We may have to add some temporary parking on either side of Lincoln Street so people can still park during construction. We've also identified a potential staging area. It's a lot owned by the town northeast of the bridge, right next to it, as a potential laydown area for materials and equipment for the contractor.
All right, thanks, Wes. So as far as environmental permitting for a project like this, you're working in stream. It's very common, if not always the case, where you have to get an Army Corps of Engineers permit anytime you're doing work in a stream or a waterway. So we've done some upfront reviewing with the Army Corps and determined that this project is a pre-construction notification permit, which is pretty common for minor span culverts and bridges. This project has a few requirements that come with the permit through Army Corps. So we have to come up with erosion control, sedimentation control, bypassing plans. And we also have to make sure that the contractor is doing the work within the stream during the low flow season. So that's typically between July 15th, September 30th. As far as Maine DEP, we're actually exempt from permits through Maine DEP, which is fairly common if you're dealing with an existing crossing. U.S. Fish and Wildlife will be involved because the project is within a critical habitat for Atlantic salmon. So Army Corps will not grant us a permit until U.S. Fish and Wildlife signs off on the design. And then there is some environmental review through FEMA, and that's part of the federal funding that we have. It's one of those requirements. So we need to prove that the project doesn't have adverse impacts on cultural, historic resources. As far as right-of-way impacts, what we're expecting, looking at this plan, the approximate right-of-way line is highlighted in orange there. On the north side, we're expecting only temporary impacts. There is one driveway that we need to reconstruct beyond the town right-of-way to provide proper slopes and not make it too steep. And there's also some temporary impacts associated with access to the walls and the bridge construction. So those are really just temporary impacts on the north side. And then switching to the south side, similarly, that orange line represents the approximate road right-of-way, which generally follows the face of the buildings. It's not exact, but there are some permanent impacts on this side. Including reconstructing the existing sidewalk that will be reconstructed right up to the face of the building, similar to how it is now, as well as the bridge. So the bridge will be reconstructed up to the property line and possibly just over the line there. So those are the anticipated right-of-way impacts for the project.
Sure. So kind of in summary here, what we've identified as the preferred alternative to the town is the alternative 4, where we're building a precast rigid frame within the existing bridge footprint, so we're not impacting any further than what's there now. So again, we're kind of anticipating the least impacts from this alternative. This also provides generally a new substructure and structure for the entire structure besides what's really adjacent to Bob's Hardware there. As Owen mentioned, there's some temporary right-of-way associated with this alternative. And then this one was also identified as the least cost alternative.
So next steps for us are to incorporate public feedback, finalize our preliminary design phase. We're hopeful tonight to receive at least tentative acceptance from the board on the preliminary design as it stands. And that'll set the stage for us to move toward final design so we can wrap the project up, like I mentioned, toward the end of summer, which will position it for, it'll meet the commitments that we've made to Senator King, Senator Collins' office on behalf of the town, and position it for additional CDS funding in the next round. So with that, I think we're wrapped up. Apologize, I think we went a little bit over, but we'd like to open up for any questions you have.
So, when you say precast bridge, it's built elsewhere and then brought in?
Yes, so right, there's several plants, we call them, that prefabricate these concrete bridge elements. And then, yes, the majority of it we brought on site on trailer trucks, and then usually a day to 2 days to set that. And then there'll be some cast in place work to tie it into the remaining foundation elements at Bob's Hardware.
Oh, excuse me. So I was at the initial meeting, which I thought was great and, instructive. I missed the public hearing.
Only a few people showed up, so.
And so I'm just a little concerned about, all the people that are going to be impacted. Like, I kept looking at the pictures of Sherry's salon and home on top of it, and I didn't see her at the initial meeting. So do we need to do some more outreach for folks? I know Bruce and Matt were here at the first, excuse me. So I'm just wanting to make sure that we have enough,
Yeah.
that we can feel confident that people know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, we've sent letters to butters on both times, so they weren't relying on seeing something, in the paper or online. They got, letters in the mail. I've had a few, phone calls. One a butter that wasn't in the first meeting, was at the second meeting. This is, like I said, this is the design. It's when we get into construction, we would assume there'd be a whole other set of outreach where, okay, here's how this project's gonna unfold, the timing, and, so it's really like these guys are talking about the design of the bridge, really. But as far as project management, it's good to have that input now. But there'll still be, discussions and meetings, when we get into this construction phase.
I can speak to that a little more if I can add to that. So, so what I talk about with, we use these acronyms, ROW, right of way impact. So that, now that we've got the preliminary design concept secure, we now produce impact plans. And in order to get those rights of entry for temporary impacts, or in the event that there's a permanent impact, like a slope easement, maintenance type work, those get presented directly to the abutters, and they have to sign off on that in order for our design to be able to get bid through this process. So yeah, we're not done, but we need to get to a certain point so we can explain to them what the impacts are. And we've been on site a couple times. In addition to the letters that have been sent out, we've spoken to folks that are owners, folks that are tenants, and folks that are generally interested.
Yeah, I'm just aware that, a lot of people aren't even aware that this is a bridge, and so it's sort of a hidden little brook that even people who've been on Lincoln Street forever haven't really paid attention to. So I think we have to be sensitive to that and know that people are going to say, what's going on? So I appreciate all the steps in the process, and I understand. Just so many people have said, what bridge? What bridge?
Well, those people who have shown up, I haven't heard any dissenting voices there. I think they know there's going to be some disruption during the construction phase, but I personally like the idea of putting in a whole new structure rather than building around a 65-year-old structure that we can't see. With the precast forms that they do, they can really engineer those to really tight specifications. And the fact that it's also the low-cost alternative is always.
And
So for businesses in the area that might be impacted due to the, they might see a drop off of people coming in because of traffic, or they think they're closed because there's all this construction. Any of these entities have like a program where if they say I lost 20% of my profit for the month compared to the last 2 years due to this, people are saying they're not coming in. Is there remediation for them to say there's a program they can apply for that's funded through this to help with that, or anything along those lines?
So typically, our experience through these projects includes a public outreach component. to notify and remind that businesses are open. And what we tried to talk about a little bit in the presentation was that not to minimize pedestrian activity through the site. So allow that to happen, then understanding, Bob's Hardware, there's some loading and unloading that goes on, so we probably need to provide some additional parking for temporary access. So there's not gonna be through access. This is a job that you could look at doing in phases, and that came up in one of the earlier meetings. You could imagine doing half the road and then doing the other half of the road. The issues with phasing a project like this is that you still get the construction disruption. It usually takes about 1.5 amount of the time, and it usually costs 1.5 to almost 2 times what it would be to shut it down. So our goal is to work on a signage program and a public outreach program through social media that the town uses and through the, otherwise the town's website, to keep people informed that businesses are open. So there's physical signage out at the site, and then there's provisions to allow pedestrian traffic, at least with some augmented parking out there. Other questions?
Edward?
So I have a couple. I was at the first meeting as well, and at that meeting, I asked about Modern Image and the building itself and the structure, and you guys said it's clear. There's no, as far as you know, there's no construction problem that could be, come up from that building on the north side. And Bob's looks the same. But you'll know when you get better underneath it. But my question is, it sounds like you're looking at number 4, which is bad. And in that, but do you feel that there's any chance for any local labor with this sort of job, or do you think it'll be clearly closed shop? You guys will be here, or do you see any local labor opportunities?
So it's quite often that on these jobs, so it gets publicly bid. And then it's quite often that local contractors with local labor force participate, because being proximal to a job site, you're often most competitive with materials, except for, like we talked about, some of the precast concrete stuff might be from out of town. But if there's trucking, if there's materials, if there's local labor, oftentimes that comes in the form of paving, or it comes in the form of earthwork. So if the contractor isn't immediate to Dover-Foxcroft, oftentimes they'll hire local subcontractors to do the work. So we're the designers. We won't be actually constructing it, but we hope to support the town in making sure that the project gets constructed correctly. So we call that the construction phase services of the professional engineering work. So generally, I mean, we can't guarantee either way, but generally we do see that just because of the nature of those projects in Maine, that you get local people that get involved in them. We would expect the same for this.
And thank you. Presuming that it will be number 4 that goes ahead and it's prefab, will the town get to own all that granite that's underneath? Because that's surely a couple dollars worth of beautiful granite.
So that's an interesting proposition, and we can, in our specifications, we'll make a note about that. But we're, several of these jobs where generally what happens is whatever excavated or waste material becomes
Oh,
property.
we don't want the waste.
Well,
No, you
right.
you take the.
Yeah, right. So now how do you sift that out?
Yeah.
Right. So that's
Yeah.
so generally what happens is the town might provide a spot where excess materials can be disposed of. And sometimes granite gets picked through, and sometimes it gets sold off, or becomes, a certain quantity of it becomes property of the town.
Yeah.
So we have flexibility to write that into the bid documents. And this is heavy stuff, right? So if a contractor doesn't have to load it into their truck as much and haul it far away to dispose of it, you generally get better pricing. So there's some flexibility that we can put into the bid documents there. And sometimes that's explicit, and sometimes it's implicit in what contractors might reach out to during the bidding process and make some agreements on.
Again, assuming that it really is definitely sounds like gonna be number 4, which is prefab, which I think is wonderful, because it needs to be all brand new, and nobody can see the bridge anyway, so let's bring in the concrete. But my question is, have you checked out the structure of the Main Street Bridge? Are you happy you can get a prefab bridge carried over that bridge? safely? That's what I wanna know.
So
We only half joking about that.
Yeah.
So the short answer is these prefabricated
All come in
sections,
pies.
they come in pieces. The most of them, because, and especially if you're in a, like I said before, we're in a sort of constrained area. So when you have a constrained area, you have a limited crane size. So most of the stuff that comes in is probably 36 to 40,000 pounds.
Yeah.
So over the road weights are, you know, a lot of that stuff might actually be like half that. You might see stuff that's 20,000 pounds, just so it's easier to deal with. So anything that comes to the site will be over the road legal, and all the bridges in the area can carry legal loads. So if there's overweight components that have to come in, they have to get a special permit through the state to be able to verify that, but we don't see that as an issue, understanding what we're talking about with.
Thank you, and I just have one more, really is my last one, just for the town and people concerned, and Joel, the day you start construction, you feel it will take you 2 months, is that 2 months, 6 weeks?
Yeah, we had talked about that, previously,
So it's not a 2-year project.
No, it's not a 2-year project. So one of the things we talked about was that in-water work window, and the, you know, construction. From our standpoint, it's when the contractor gets the notice to proceed and when they're done. But then people think about construction as, when's the dust, when's the noise?
Yeah.
So that period should be reduced. It should be a limited operation during the summer. We want to have the project go on so that the contractor doesn't start and then stop and wait for prefabricated components and then come back. Nobody likes a construction job where nothing appears to be going on. So we try to stage and phase the work so that once they get started, they can keep moving. So there's a whole process leading up to construction in earnest where we get design submittals like on that precast frame, review those, and those get fabricated off-site, and we schedule that with the contractor. But yeah, this should be a 1-season project.
Thank you.
Other questions for the engineers? Thank you, Jason and Wesley. And,
Thank you.
Oh, and on the Zoom. So it would be helpful to you, in my understanding, that you get some sense from the select board that we endorse your
Yeah.
approach to the preliminary design work, so you can go ahead on that track. And you all feel comfortable with the outline that we've received so far? Anyone willing to make a motion to endorse that approach?
So move.
Okay. Second, Joel. Okay, all those in favor?
Yes.
All right, you have your marching orders, and we look forward to getting that going next summer.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And we'll try not to have stuff fall on you. Clear out your meeting here. Right. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to item B. This is the fiscal year 23-24 supplemental tax commitments. There are 3 property owners. I guess we're talking about a pre-growth penalty. Right, is that?
Yeah, so you see these supplements throughout the year, but
Supplemental.
we do one commitment at the end of the year that encapsulates all the ones that you've seen, so. Tree growth, they're all tree growth.
Yeah.
We're just doing certain levels of removal.
All right, so we need a motion to approve the supplemental tax commitment, and sign the appropriate documents.
I'll move to approve the supplemental tax commitment for FY 23-24 and to sign the supplemental tax warrant and.
Is there a second? Can I second it? Any discussion? All those in favor? Pretty routine thing. Yeah. Thank you. Next item is the appointment of the election warden and the deputy warden. And it's been suggested that we appoint Phyllis Lyford as the election warden and Cheryl Peckham as the deputy election warden for July 11th referendum. We have separate motions for both, so who wants to start us off with Phyllis?
I'll move to appoint Phyllis Lyford of Dover-Foxcroft as the election warden for the June 11th referendum election.
Is there a second?
Second?
Second, I got through all kinds of seconds. Pick, whoever you want.
She said second.
Okay, good. You both raise your hand and verbalize. That's very good.
I'm trainable.
All those in favor? That is unanimous. And the same for Cheryl Peckham as the deputy.
Move to appoint Cheryl Pinkham of Atkinson, Maine as the deputy election warden.
Any second to that? All right, thank you for letting someone else have it. All those in favor? Thank you. All right, moving on, the next item is, item D, which is select board summer meeting schedule. We typically have, one regular scheduled meeting each month during the summer, and the schedule looks like June 17th, the third Monday of, next month. July 22nd, the fourth Monday of that month, and August 26th, the fourth Monday of August. And select, we have the option of having special meetings if we need something in those times. So I know one of them complained in the past about having only one meeting per month during the summer. So, all right. So are we okay with that schedule?
Move to approve?
Move to approve, and second, Joel seconded it. All those in favor? Thank you very much. All right, and then we have one final item here, which was Nanette Redmond as the
Yes, I will move to appoint deputy code enforcement officer. Well, to appoint Nanette as the deputy code enforcement officer.
Second. You got it.
and all those in favor. We're all in favor of that. Congratulations on another title.
I'd just like to say, how much work Ann has put into being certified as a code enforcement officer. She started like the 1st of February, really, very end of January. So in less than 4 months, take all the classes and get certification. And it's a huge help to the town because if Brian is not here and something needs to be signed off on, in the code office, we don't have to have the person come back and catch Brian because Nan is now able to do it, being a deputy. So.
Well, Brian is away sometimes, so fires happen.
His pager goes off.
Goes off. He has to be away from the office. Okay, town manager's report.
So we've talked about the fiber broadband project that Consolidated is going to do in our area. Not just Dover-Foxcroft, Dexter, parts of some towns surrounding us. I was under the impression that our side of it would be in a year, but we had a call with Consolidated, and their plan is to be in Dover-Foxcroft running fiber throughout the town.
Will be called
In-
vegetable then?
After the look by, in August, starting August, and having all of the fiber run by the end of October, and basically expecting that, anybody will be able to start subscribing in November. But as they complete a section, people can start subscribing, so you don't have to wait until the end of the project. So whoever's on the front end of that, but that's a lot more ambitious than I originally thought, but they're expecting that pretty much anywhere where there's landline access to, phone, they have plant that they will now serve with fiber. And it's a real upgrade from, someone that has, the current service. And we have, we do have fiber in town, but we have a lot of fiber coax hybrid system. And this will be symmetrical, 100 over 100, or 1 gig over 1 gig. So it'll be what's considered, served high-speed access.
And how many years has this been in the making?
Like,
Like unbelievable how, this is finally happening.
right.
Could I just say, it's a great opportunity, Joel, for a fiber festival.
People would probably love it.
Get a committee together for,
So
in the fall.
if you're reading this post, you must have the Comcast.
It's true.
That's right.
We don't have a fall festival, it could be, that could be a fall fiber fest.
Go Cindy, your chair.
Well, That's how it usually works.
Your idea, you do.
We digress.
Yep, and so we're still working with FEMA on trying to get funding for costs that we had for just trying to bring things back to where we need them to be from the December flood. We had some washouts. Still have some debris we have to deal with, a lot of trees came down, we cut them back so that it doesn't bother the travelway, but we have chance now to kind of go back and get debris out of the entire right of way itself. We're gonna be doing some of that right away. And then this is also a chance to be looked at for FEMA mitigation funds where we can take culverts that are proven to be too small with the amount of flows that we had and get bigger ones. And maybe do some riprap in some areas so that they're less being washed out. So we're putting together a pretty, I think, worthwhile project. It's both restoration but also mitigation. And we're also looking at funding for trying to upgrade that section of Grove Street that we used as the bypass that just did not hold up, but should be something that is able to be utilized, to be able to bypass town. Obviously the flood was one reason, but if you had any reason why sort of the center of town was not accessible and you needed to bypass, downtown, Grove Street is one way from the south side to be able to do that. So that's all part of that. And then I just wanted to mention that as we're getting closer to June 11th, the last day to request an absentee ballot is Thursday, June 6th. Some people misinterpret that and they assume that they could do it the Friday before. It's actually the Thursday before. So June 6th is the last day you can request one, but you can return an absentee ballot all the way up to the closing of the polls, not election day, but to request one without a special circumstance. So, it's sort of requesting an absentee ballot, deadline is June 6th, but if you have a special circumstance that you would qualify for one after that, you can still request one based on that.
Like if somebody's in the hospital or something.
Yeah, and I don't have the criteria, but it would just be, presenting a special circumstance, and if it's, one of the allowable ones, then they could get one on the Friday or even the Monday. That's all I have.
Good, thank you, John. All right, so, any closing remarks? We do have a short executive session plan. Any final remarks? Off the good one. All right.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry.
Yeah.
Is it possible for the town to put out some sort of notice that is just a reminder to get out and vote? At least, is that spending money unwise?
No matter how you go, I mean, one thing, I'm glad you mentioned, we need to have more people show up the polls, no matter what's on the ballot. When I see, less than 25% of the voters show up for a municipal election, I find that embarrassing. And that's about the norm for all the towns around here. So no matter how you feel about the dam, or how you feel about the land use ordinances or the budget or anything, just the budget. That's why we have a democracy, so people can express their opinion through their vote. So it's a precious thing, and it dovetails with the Memorial Day. We honor the people who fought to make that possible. So the least we can do is show up and vote.
So are you thinking, Emery's question was about how are we reminding? We put those sandwich boards out
We
day
put the
out.
boards out and
We'll run it on the PD.
PD sign.
Right, okay, yeah.
We can just,
As long as we're doing something.
we can do the, just the, get out the vote, don't forget to vote,
Yeah.
type posts on our social media. It's, just encouraging people, voting is available now with absentee, just that information.
Is there budget for on social media to put up a post that we post just for people located in this area? So when they're on, it may come up and remind them. And that's what most businesses do, trying to capture that type of information, and it's not too expensive to do for a small town like this, really.
We have funds we could use to do that. So I have no idea, like pricing wise, what that is, but we certainly, we have advertising funds. That's a form of advertising, and to boost a post to get people aware of the date of the vote and stuff.
Well, we can just post a regular social media reminder too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see also, seeing it on the feed, and Also, the press does its part, you know, the press, you know, usually the
Well, that's, I'm just saying.
Feel of the Eastern Gazette is with us, and I'm sure that the Eastern Gazette will have reminders. Their publication is, will be.
Sean's group will be posting.
Yeah.
Great.
All right, so we
Okay.
have an executive session
Yeah.
scheduled, and Cindy will make the motion.